Hi everyone, I'm excited to present to you the 16th installation in our Famous Artist series. This one is all about Jackson Pollock. The purpose of this video is to just give you an overview of how I've set up the unit so that once you start it with your kiddos, you can hit the ground running. So let's dive right in. The first of 3 sessions, make note of that. This is 3 sessions long, ideally 40 minutes each, but you should be able to kind of pick and choose if you want to stretch things out or condense things. But in the first of our 3 sessions in this unit, you are going to be presenting a digital storybook. The digital storybook has the primary goal of exposing kids to a ton of Jackson Pollock's works, particularly his action paintings. I sort of juxtapose his approach to a more conventional approach to try to help kids understand why Jackson Pollock is such a big deal. They get a chance to really think about how he sort of broke the mold and sort of, came up with his own unique approach to working bigger and being more expressive in his work. So you're going to wrap up that digital storybook with a drawing activity. You'll give them a little preview that they're going to get a chance to try their own action painting, their own drip painting in session number 2. But as a warm-up activity, you're going to have them do something on paper, and it is designed to get kids really thinking about Jackson Pollock's approach and how messy it might have been. So this one says Jackson Pollock's work shoes. The prompt is, what do you think Jackson Pollock's boots might look like after he completed an action painting? So they can do this with crayon, color pencil, marker. It's okay to scribble scrabble in this one. You want them thinking about his process and how his process may have impacted his shoes. Now they can, add some paint around the shoes on the floor too. And I even added into the resource, if you want to encourage them, if they get done and have a little time to spare, they could flip the paper over and draw what masterpiece was Jackson Pollock working on that caused his boots to look however they have them looking. So that's just a fun opportunity to practice some good old-fashioned scribble scrabbling, get them in the act of being expressive and working in an abstract way and really thinking about their feelings rather than trying to illustrate something specific. So that'll bring you to the end of the first of 3 sessions. The second session, we will start off with a compare and contrast discussion where you will see 2 images juxtaposed. An image of kind of your conventional artist dressed up, standing at an easel, holding an artist palette, painting something very small and detailed. That is sitting side by side, a picture of Jackson Pollock at work where he's got his canvas sprawled out on the floor and he's leaning over and being real gestural. So you're just sort of using that comparison to review all that was discussed in session 1 and to kind of reframe their thinking, get ready for some good action that day on session 2. You're then going to prompt kids to watch a video on YouTube of Jackson Pollock himself at work, getting down to it. Now, I do strongly recommend that you preview this video that you'll be linked to in the resource. The reason for that is because in the video, students may notice that Jackson Pollock is holding a cigarette. Unfortunately, all the footage I could find of Jackson Pollock has a cigarette involved, and it's kind of part of his image, and obviously that's not something we as educators really want to be glamorizing for little kids. So I recommend you preview that video and just make your own personal call on how you feel about that, how you think your kids will perceive that, how their parents, or if you're at a public school, how the administrators may feel about that. It is certainly not the focus of the video. It's one of those sort of incidentals, and I have had kids notice it. Luckily, it hasn't been a problem. So I choose to incorporate it, but I just want to give you a heads up on that in case you feel differently about that. You can actually show, this is already kind of cut down from a bigger film, it's just an excerpt, but you can actually shorten the part that you have kids watch. He at some point like flicks the cigarette out of his hand, and so maybe you can kind of cue the video up right to that part and have them watch from that point forward. Your call. But I just felt like I should disclose that. Now, after they watch the video, you will ask them, did you notice his work shoes? Because in the video, it definitely shows his shoes. He almost has like a Mr. Rogers thing where he takes his regular shoes off and puts his art boots on. And so he also mentions being inspired by the sand paintings of the West. So I put in a picture of a sand painting, and kind of you'll prompt kids to sort of reflect on how was he influenced by this? What does his work and this work have in common? And then you will be transitioning into the studio project. Now, I will warn you, this is a very messy one. I have tried, I don't know, at least 10 different approaches to Jackson Pollock inspired painting with kids, and they're all really fun. All of them are a hit. Kids love this type of work. They're all incredibly messy. So just brace yourself. If you're going to do this one, you have to just become one with the mess. Now, I have chosen to include a technique that has sort of emerged as my favorite technique for having kids, think about Jackson Pollock's approach to art making, and it really focuses more on his drip than his flicking of paint. He does both. And I've done a ton of flicking, and it's so fun. We've gone outside to do it. It gets all over the kids' clothes. It gets all over the floor. It gets all over the walls. I mean, it gets everywhere, which is fun. And if you're at home and you kind of hose everything down, have fun with it. But in the classroom, that does get kind of complicated, especially if you have a class coming right after that class. So I tend to, always be thinking about how can I make this manageable for a large group. And that's why I love using Oobleck. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to have kids add cornstarch to their paint. And in doing that, they're basically making Oobleck. I don't know if you're familiar with that word, that the Dr. Seuss book, Oobleck, Bartholomew and the Oobleck, something like that. I made it a ton with my mom when I was a kid, but it's basically cornstarch and water, and it becomes like this non-Newtonian fluid has a real nice flow to it when you pick it up with a spoon and drip it. And that is why it is so awesome for this project. So I took Oobleck and then I add paint to it. So then it kind of becomes this Oobleck paint, and it has a wonderful drippy quality that just makes it ideal. I want to show you this. This is tempera paint on a spoon. I know it's been sitting here for a few minutes, but it's not dry. It doesn't drip very well. Of course I got to flick it and it's going to come off that spoon. Kids will figure out a way to get it off that spoon. But when you mix cornstarch and a little bit of water into the paint, you get this really, this is like so drippy and just lovely. And it has this kind of honey quality to it. And the kids just get mesmerized, and the idea is for them to slowly, not flick. They never make contact between the spoon and the surface, their work surface, but they just drip the paint on it. It's almost the same experience, similar in many ways to making a drip castle. I spend a lot of time at the beach and I just love that kind of quality. That's what this feels like to me. And they're basically drizzling color all over. Personally, I recommend making a batch of Oobleck just plain white, then make one that's black, and then let them decide on a third color. But it's totally up to you. Also, you might consider the directions prompt the kids to make the Oobleck themselves, kind of stir it all up. You want to just be thinking about a ratio of 1 part cornstarch to 2 parts water. That's a good starting point. Then you stir, and they'll kind of know they hit the sweet spot when it has that nice drippy quality. You don't want to be too runny, because it'll just like spread all over the work surface, and that's not good either. You want it to kind of hold its shape a little bit. But it takes a little finagling. You have to sort of putz with it and get the ratio just right. If you know your kids best. If you don't think they can handle that part, or it's just going to take too much time, or just be too much of a mess, you can pre-mix all that stuff for them. But if you're working with a small group of kids and you've got a little bit of flexibility time-wise, let them be a part of that process. It's a whole fun chunk that has nothing to do with Jackson Pollock, but it's just like fun to mix and make the paint. But then the other thing, so you're making the Oobleck paint, whether you're doing it or your kids are doing it, and then you're going to drizzle it. Now, I recommend picking a work surface that I used craft foam. I've used cardboard, I've used paper, but paper is not ideal because it absorbs a lot of the moisture, which kind of deflates the paint. This Oobleck paint has like a real dimensional quality, almost like puffy paint. In fact, you could maybe use puffy paint on a project like this, but you want to kind of preserve that kind of dimensional quality, and craft foam is great for that. It's not great in terms of being archival, nor is Oobleck paint. I should also disclose that right away. This is not like a framer. This is not a long-term keeper project. This is more like process art, where they really enjoy the experience, but the chances of this thing making it home in one piece, not real high. But that's okay. You're not going to have complaints from the kids about that. They're going to love it. So you have them drizzle the paint on. I would plan to let them drip paint on different colors all over their paper or whatever their work surface is going to be for about 5 or 6 minutes. That sounds so short, but it's going to feel like a lifetime in your classroom. And then once time is up, have them walk away, drop the spoons, drop the Oobleck, drop their project. We're just leaving here, and have the kids. I always have them relocate to my little classroom rug. And then you'll see in the resource, I have prompted, I have a link included to an episode of Maddie and Dada, which is a cute series relating to art history. If you're not familiar, it's going to cue you up to an episode of Maddie and Dada that focuses on Jackson Pollock. So it's related. It gets the kids' attention and it pulls them away from their supplies so that you have time to run around and clean up. As you're cleaning up, do not use a rag that you're then going to rinse in the sink. Cornstarch is not fantastic for pipes. Use a paper towel so you can clean everything up and dump it in the trash. Your leftover containers, same thing, scoop it into the trash. Do not run it down the sink. Not great for pipes. Now, you're going to have to put their projects all over somewhere to dry. But they dry pretty fast, but you want to kind of keep them out of the way until you guys meet for session 3. This is the final session. I have it set up as they will do a couple quick fun facts, and then you're going to do a lesson review. I put in some review prompts, but if you want to, you can customize those. I put in blank templates, and then you're going to have an art show. So you're going to have the kids, spread out all their projects. And I put in some questions, discussion questions. They may not need any guidance. They may just spontaneously start chatting about what they're looking at. But I put in a couple questions to kind of help a conversation get going if it's not naturally progressing. And then, the idea there is just to have them looking at their work and talking about other people's work and noticing different techniques. Did this one maybe have a little more water than that one? How did that color turn out? Oh, look at how the layers in this one. You're just having them talk about art. Learning how to talk about art is a life skill. But you will notice during this part that some of the projects are going to start the process of breaking down. And basically what I mean by that is like the Oobleck itself will kind of come off in chunks, and that's because it's not binding to the surface of that craft foam in any kind of permanent way. And that's okay. Now, if you want to, you can have the show, you can take pictures of the kids with their project, and that's the end of that. Then you chuck everything. You could, if you're feeling determined, slide them all into like Ziploc bags and seal them up real good and send it with the kids and just warn the kids. They have to be so super delicate. I mean, the projects are so delicate and fragile. They have to be very, very careful on the way home if they want to show mom and dad. But even once they show mom and dad, they're probably going to end up in the trash because these are not meant to be like long-term keeper type projects. And so I'm trying to think. Oh, there's a self-assessment after the art show if you're interested. And it just has kids thinking about the different steps of the studio project. I made Oobleck I added color to my Oobleck. Now, if you did that for them, obviously you have to glide right past those two statements. But I dripped layers of Oobleck on, to make a drip painting. And the last statement says, I used my materials carefully and tried my best on my project. Now, there's a little spot for teacher comments. If you want to print one of these out, you could take this and the boots page and the kiddos Oobleck project, put them all in a little Ziploc bag and send it all home together. That's your call. If printing is an issue in your workspace, then you could also just project that self-assessment and walk kids through the statements and have them rate themselves in a way other than writing it down, either by thumbs up or, you know, not so good, really good, fantastic, or just with a smile on their face. There's tons of ways to do that without printing, so always remember that. But that will get you to the end of the project. I just love this stuff. You can sit down after the kiddos leave and just play with it yourself. Anyway, if you have another approach to working in a Jackson and Pollock inspired way, I would love to hear about it. If you're willing to take pictures, share with us your questions, your successes, your messes. We'd love to hear from you. And that is it. So I hope that you and your kiddos have fun with this one.